I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say our word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Yes, you're perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Oh, you're perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. This love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable, I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love, you're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am.
Today we're starting a new theme in our services that will be taking us from here up until Easter. We're going to be using some really helpful material produced by the Baptist Union called Where Do We Grow From Here? This was actually put together in 2019 before COVID by a man called Ken Benjamin, who at the time was serving as the president of the Baptist Union. He was also minister of Chichester Baptist Church. And in his role as president, he was touring around the UK, encouraging churches to engage with this really important question. Where do we grow from here? And I actually think that this question is even more important now with the changes brought about by COVID and as we look towards the future. Over the past few months, we've already been reflecting as a church on what it looks like to be God's people during and post COVID-19. Before Christmas, we studied Acts chapter 2 as we thought about what the essentials of church life are We looked at teaching and fellowship and the breaking of bread and prayer. And also at our discussion evening that we had recently, we identified a few other areas that we consider as a church family to be essential, like world mission, social action and social justice, sung worship, and having opportunities to meet and be together as the body of Christ. But we've also been recognising the change and new opportunities brought about by this time. When I spoke on the verse for the year, I talked about not just settling for the stale water of our old wells, the ways of being church that once sustained us and gave us life, but instead seeking God's guidance in digging new wells that will enable us as God's people here in Ruddington to be even more fruitful, to grow in both faith and in number as we seek to reach more people with the good news of Jesus. And so, off the back of these conversations we've been having, I think this question and this material produced by Ken Benjamin fits really nicely. So from our current context, having stopped many of our old activities and ways of doing and being church for a while, and also from this unsettling place of lockdown, it's important that we begin to engage with this question. Where do we grow from here? Where does Ruddington Baptist Church grow from here? This series was actually produced for small groups, but I'm adapting it for our services. And each week there's going to be a Bible passage for us to consider that either myself or someone else will be helping us to think about. And then for each session, there's a very short 3 to 4 minute video clip of Ken Benjamin sharing some of his thoughts to get us thinking a bit more. Some weeks I then might pose some questions for us to think about individually as we go away from the service. And some weeks we might actually get into breakout rooms, into smaller groups for some discussion and some further prayer and thought. So hopefully that gives you an idea of where we're going. We're going to make a start this week with the first session, which is called A New Chapter or Opening Paragraph. And we're going to begin with our reading, which is from Luke 12, verses 35 to 48. And Helen is going to read this for us. So this series is all about considering the incredible resources and gifts that we have when we gather together as Christians and as a church. And then from that, the responsibilities, opportunities and adventure that follow as a result. This passage has quite a lot in it that we could think about today. But I want to focus on the way the model servant in this passage is described. Here are some of the words used to describe the kind of servant the master is looking for. Someone who is ready, someone who's waiting and watching, who is faithful and wise, who manages well, who treats others with love and respect, and who is a willing servant. This is a parable. It's a story told by Jesus to help us understand our role as God's people here on earth in this time between Jesus ascending to heaven and the time when one day he will return. The word that isn't directly used in this passage, but that sums it all up quite well, is the word responsibility. This is a passage that helps us to understand our responsibility as followers of Jesus, to be ready, to be watching and waiting, faithful and wise, managing well the resources given to us by God, treating others with love and respect, and being willing servants of Jesus. The word responsibility might stir up all kinds of emotions in you. Some people like responsibility and get enthusiastic about having a duty and a role. For others, the word responsibility might sound a bit heavy. But let's remember that God knows our personalities, our temperaments, our worries, our capacity, our gifts and abilities. This isn't about being a miracle worker, that's God's role. Rather, it's about being good stewards of the resources that God has given us, our time, our energy, our gifts and skills. And for everyone, that will be different. The last line of this passage, I think, is a helpful summary of the responsibility given to us as Christians. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. God has a plan and a role for each one of us and for us as a church together. Every single one of us has gifts and resources we can bring, and every single person is needed. But the big question, I think, for us today is this: how can we best harness and use the incredible gifts and resources that God has given to us as a church family? One of our main responsibilities, I think, as Christians is to share our faith with others and to make disciples, as Jesus said in the Great Commission. One German theologian, whose name I won't even try to pronounce, once said that the gospel must be constantly forward to a new address because the recipient is repeatedly changing his place of residence. By this, he meant that the message that we share as Christians, the good news about Jesus, stays the same, but how we present it must change as we continually seek to communicate it in a culturally relevant way. And so this adds another question to the first. The first question that I posed was, how can we best harness and use the incredible gifts and resources God has given to us as a church family? And the second question is, how can we as a church more clearly and more effectively communicate the good news of Jesus in both our words and our actions? These are questions that we can start considering now, but may be worth returning to in future weeks as we go further into this series, thinking about how we can do church in a way that enables us to share our faith more clearly and to grow in faith ourselves. And we're going to hear a few more thoughts now from Ken Benjamin on this passage. So let's watch this video clip together.
Luke 12 and from verse 48, halfway through, says, "From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded, and from the one who's been entrusted with much, much more will be asked." When you look at the context of that, it isn't necessarily those who have loads in terms of resources and numbers and money. It's actually those who've been given the information, the insights about Jesus. So I think that applies to all of us and gives all of us an onus to do what we can. My name's Ken Benjamin, and I went into church ministry primarily, if I'm honest, because I found church somewhat dull and boring, and yet I really believed. I was committed to the message, if not necessarily all of the packaging. So my thinking was, if we make church credible and interesting and relevant, then people will come. And we've been trying to do that. I don't always succeed in that, and nor does everybody in my church, but that's certainly our aim. I was probably about 7 years into ministry and trying to do exactly that, and we'd seen some measure of success, I guess. Whether that's real success or not, only the Lord knows. And yet it became clear to me that even doing that, it will never be the answer for a growing number of people for whom church as we do it just isn't the sort of thing that they will walk into and try, even with a great invitation. And we can't be okay with that. So I began to explore on a sabbatical break those people and churches who were trying imaginative ways of reaching out with the message of hope beyond the existing ways of church that we do. I was investigating that in a number of ways, and somebody I spoke to said to me, "So Ken, when you come back from sabbatical, is what you do, what you're going to do to write the new chapter in the life of your church?" And my answer to that was, no, it's not for me to write a whole chapter in the life of my church, but I might write the opening paragraph and see where our congregation take it. I meant it as a metaphor, but in the end, it became like a literal paragraph for me as I thought about some of the things that are key as we're processing these sorts of questions in the UK at the moment. What I'd like to do is to read you that paragraph and ask you some questions about it. Here's what I came back to my church with. When you have the message of hope for people, hope for now and forever, when you have so much in terms of people and space and money and values and unity, when your main ways are having great effect for some but little effect for many, when you don't have to drop all the main ways that are having some effect to try new ways, when what matters is the original messenger more than the cherished ways of conveying his message, when your aim is to find out what pleases God and go for it wholeheartedly, when it's okay to try things and fail sometimes and learn and move on, when he promises to come with us in power and guide us by his Spirit, when we hit on what it means to try things in his name, then what follows carries with it responsibility, opportunity, and adventure. So, in many ways, all that we're now doing in my church flowed from that opening paragraph in the life of my church. I didn't write the rest of it. My question to you, though, is to what extent does what I've just read resonate with you? To what extent is our story your story in your church and in your small group? What flows from that as well? What discussion points come from it?
your guide. Clear the sky.